This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by the good-looking folks at GoDaddy.com. Use our code Linux and save yourself some cash. And welcome to the Linux Action Show, Season 23, Episode 9. My name is Chris.
And my name is Matt.
Hey, Matt, should I tell the folks what we have coming up on the big show today?
I think it's time to do so.
Man, this is going to be a lot of shows. So in the second half of the show, Alan from TechSnap's joining us, and we are reviewing PC-BSD. And Alan, Alan is a longtime BSD user, so he's going to help us out with some of the technical aspects of the review. He's also going to cover the Warden system that allows you to easily set up FreeBSD jails, including a jail that runs Linux.
Oh, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I set one up last night. It runs Debian. It's really cool inside FreeBSD.
Oh,
so
that's sweet.
We'll talk about that. And then, of course, we're going to cover the news this week. We've also got some emails coming up at the end of the show. But this segment, Matt, it's our picks segment. And since in our review today, we'll be talking about an enterprise-grade operating system, I thought maybe we should do some enterprise-grade picks.
I think that makes sense.
So everything we have today will be stuff that is going to make you more useful, with maybe the exception of my Runs Linux pick.
And that would be in the business space and not necessarily on a Galaxy-class Starship. Just want to throw that out there.
Maybe.
It could, although, I mean, they may run Linux.
Open source can run them for a long time.
The whole enterprise thing, I had to kind of throw that out there.
They might just keep hacking on away until the 24th century. You never know.
That works. That could work for me.
All right. Check out this Runs Linux. Not so enterprise grade, but kind of funny. I don't know if you think about it.
Check her out.
Here we go. Well, not that one. Here we go.
There it is.
This is coming from the Register, and vandals break into a congressman's office and install Linux on his PCs.
I don't know if I'd consider that adoption or, I don't know how I'd consider that. That's interesting.
So now it's not quite clear if the people who installed Linux actually did the forced entry.
Right.
The congressman's office was vandalized with rocks and bricks and things like that, and windows were broken. And then it's not clear if the attackers, quote unquote, came in afterwards and loaded Linux, or if they're the ones that broke the windows and got in and installed Linux. It doesn't look like it because there's not.
So we can't necessarily say they used brute force to get in.
Right.
But,
so
definitely.
But according to a statement from the Grimm campaign, the congressman's last name is Grimm, large stones and concrete were thrown through the campaign office windows during or around the same time miscreants corrupted and erased the hard drives of the campaign computer server, which contains confidential campaign files and polling data, by installing Linux.
Oh boy! Well, I hope they had updates, or rather, backups, rather. No.
Yeah. Now, first-term Congressman Grimm, who is 42 years old, is a former FBI agent and a Marine, and he's running for re-election in November. So you always wonder if this kind of stuff is just to generate a little PR buzz. Grimm is also the subject of a federal investigation into funding that took place during his successful 2010 campaign. So he's got a little hoopla around him. But the campaign said whoever is responsible is very ignorant, and they don't understand this is just not an attack against me or my campaign. This is an attack against the Federal Campaign Office, which is an attack against our democracy as a whole. It is an attack against what we stand for free elections.
So I think without all the drama that they tried to insinuate there, I think basically it comes down to it's a federal crime. And that's really where we're at with it. They wanted to soup it up a little bit. But yeah, it's a no-no.
You install Linux, you do time. At least that way.
Yeah, I want to know what distribution they installed.
Yeah, I do too. And you got to wonder why. Maybe the congressman could have run the numbers. Maybe he's saving the campaign money.
Could be.
And now they can spend more money on attack ads.
I mean, they could have at least backed up his data first, right? I mean,
that is sloppy.
Throw the guy a bone.
Yeah, you're right there. Jeez. In fact, Matt, I want to tell you about GoDaddy.com, because one of the things you can do is use their online storage for backups, and GoDaddy.com is sponsoring this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. Good morning, GoDaddy.
Good morning.
Here's the thing. Everybody out there that's in our kind of peer group is probably once or twice bought a few domains that they're either holding on to.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like a territory grab, right? Like land grab kind of thing. It's kind of funny. But I get these they kind of stack up, and you kind of go back and forth and you waffle like, is it worth renewing these ones and things like that? So we talked to GoDaddy, and people have loved one of the codes they've done recently. So they've give us a bonus round on this code. So check it out.
Okay.
Yeah, this is great. I just saved $60 on Thursday by using this code. If you just want to take 20% off your entire order, if you're doing renewals or something like that. I know. It actually really, at $60, I did like a whole batch and just boom, took it all off right there. Use the code GO20OFF6. GO20OFF6 when you're shopping at GoDaddy.com. And there you go. So I mean, this is a treat for you video watchers.
Oh,
the
yeah.
audio,
You got the hair going here.
Yeah,
Yep,
there we go. Hello, Matt. Hello.
Just go ahead and brush that right in.
I do work on this hair quite a bit, Matt. You have to say. Yes. Now,
all right.
but maybe you're doing something like you're buying yourself a family blog for the holidays, something like that, and you want to just grab a .com. You're not doing something that's very expensive. You just want to grab something quick, maybe a couple of .coms. We've got a code for that too. It's $5.99 Linux. You use this code, you get a .com for $5.99.
I'm liking that.
I know.
Goodbye.
I know.
Goodbye.
Think about how you can impress Aunt Harriet, who makes that really great green bean casserole with the crunchy onions on top.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she'd love to see that. You give her you go to the family thing. You bring your fancy new tablet that you want to show off to everybody anyways because you got a new tablet.
Exactly.
You load this website up that you bought from GoDaddy.com using our code $5.99 Linux. Oh my gosh, you're the family hero.
Exactly.
I think the holidays have been on my mind a lot lately.
It's that time of year, isn't it?
It is.
Yep.
So thank you to GoDaddy.com for supporting this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. And thank you everyone who uses our code $5.99 Linux and Go20 off 6. Very cool.
Awesome.
All right, Matt, let's do my first app pick.
Okay.
Now, remember, kind of an enterprisey business grade pick this week.
Okay. I'm going to keep that in mind.
And when you're in the enterprise or when you're in business or support, you're dealt a lot of different random variables. And sometimes you've got your portable device and you wish you could do something a little more capable of it. Like you've got somebody's type of USB storage, maybe it's an SD card, something like that, and you want to be able to read it and grab files off of it. But maybe it's formatted in something crazy, like that HFS Plus system from the 70s. Maybe it's got that on there, right?
Yeah, who needs that?
Right? Or maybe it's got that NTFS, that new technology file system.
I mean, it's rocking $19.99.
Yeah. So, and you want to be able to read that on your Android device? Well, I have got the pick for you. This was sent in by several people, submitted to the Reddit, sent to me on Twitter. So thank you, everybody, to make sure that I saw this. Here it is. It's Paragon, NTFS, and HFS Plus. And it does require root, so I got to make that disclaimer.
Well, that's understandable.
But if you've got root, it's the only solution available in the market that mounts NTFS and HFS formatted USB drives or SD cards automatically.
I like that.
So you can pop that thing in there. You can write it to NTFS. You can read NTFS. You can format that card to NTFS. And it's got kind of a adorable UI. It's not bad. It's very functional. It'll read your SD cards. And what's cool about this is you think about down the road as probably more and more people start running Android on netbooks or, I don't know, whatever other fancy things.
I see a lot of migration happening there, or at least a lot of portability. So,
well, the other thing that'd be really cool is there are Android tablets now that are coming out that have USB ports on them, like ZennyThink, I think ZThink.
Oh yeah.
They have a metal encased tablet that has a USB port on the side.
Oh,
of it
so that could be really. So you just put this app, put this app into play there, and I mean, wing, bam, boom, right?
Bob's your uncle.
There it is. Oh, there we are.
There's Bob's your uncle.
There
so you got that in there at the first segment. You're welcome, Internet. You're welcome. Yep. All right, now this next one is to protect your data. A lot of us probably have a couple machines on our network that are running SSH, or maybe you've got a machine remotely that you log into that has SSH open on it, and it'd be nice to be able to transmit your data from your machine, wherever you're at, to the other machine, and have essentially what is a front end to rsync over SSH. And that is exactly what I found here. It's called Sync Backup. And this is one I've been sitting on for a little while. I actually, I do have it installed here.
I have a chance to kind of play with it there.
I'll show you, for you video viewers, I'll show you the UI here so you can see this. Let me, here we go, line that sucker up. Okay. So it's got a OK icon. It's right here. It works, right?
It's identifiable.
It's Now the UI is very clean, and it allows you to just say, all right, I want to back up.
So you're going to browse to your directory path.
I'm going to back up my documents directory, and then you can say my destination is on an SSH server. You put in your username, you put in the IP address, and the path on the remote system, so it would be like /home/backup/Chris's desktop. And then you say go, and you can write that out to a config file, which you can then clone to do other machines. And then it'll also give you a tab where you can see what's running in real time. And you can schedule this, and you can also have it run in trial mode where it'll run through and tell you everything it's going to sync over. Now, because it's using, if people aren't familiar, it's using rsync underneath it. And rsync is kind of like one of the most amazing network synchronization utilities for any platform.
Would you go so far as to say it's like Apple users have Time Machine, but it's like that plus a lot more?
Like
millions times.
Time Machine fundamentally depends on components of rsync to do its job. rsync is very, very capable of moving just differentials. It's very smart. It can do bandwidth throttling. It can be intelligent about timestamps and preserving file attributes as it moves them, and
clean restoration restorations.
Yes, and revisioning and all kinds of things. So this is a little GUI that sits on top of that and lets you sync over SSH, which of course is one of the best ways to really transmit data over the internet. And yes, the chat room's asking, it does blend. So that's sync backup, one word. We'll have a link to it in the show notes. And it is a free download for many distributions out there.
And if you're wondering if it blends yet, you generally want to set your Blender to high for that, though. Just going to throw that out there because it is a very powerful application. So.
It says here, it says the way they pitch the rsync thing is it takes advantage of the delta transfer algorithm, which reduces the amount of data sent over the network by sending only differences between the source files and the existing files on the destination. So very fancy way of saying rsync rocks.
But I like the fact that their features are nicely bullet pointed without a lot of crap. Dig that.
See, and they have RPMs and debs and a source file available for your downloads.
Well, that covers everybody. I like it.
All right, Matt.
The sauce.
Let's keep our enterprise theme moving here. It's a pick that we've never made on the show. In fact, it's a distribution we almost never talk about.
And we should.
And it's almost one of the most widely used distributions in enterprise in the world.
Oh, yeah. Easily.
What am I talking about? What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about CentOS. And the reason why I made CentOS our distribution pick this week is, surprisingly, I saw back and forth on blogs this week, on the Linux Action Show subreddit, where people are talking about, I think Fedora would make a really great enterprise desktop if it had a long-term support edition. And I'm like...
it's like, how do you... Okay, yeah.
So CentOS is an enterprise-grade free distribution that is binary compatible with Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And what they do is they go get the sources for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. They remove all branding, anything that could be trademark infringing, and then they compile it, and they make it available for download on their website. And you can install desktop packages. Now, for those of you not familiar, Red Hat Enterprise Linux is eventually based off of Fedora. So Fedora iterates and iterates and iterates, and then they take a snapshot of that, and they stabilize, and they do whatever they need to do to make it Red Hat Enterprise, and then they ship that as a product. And so what you can do is you can go grab CentOS, you can choose to install KDE or GNOME or XFCE or whatever you want, and then Bob's your uncle, you've got a long-term support, quote-unquote, Fedora desktop.
Exactly. And from my own usage of CentOS, I found that you're not always, it's not going for the cutting edge. It's going for long-term stability so that, where Fedora is more maybe on par with like an immediate Ubuntu release, I would say this is more on par with like Debian and taking the long approach and making sure that everything is really well tested and everything's ensured to work as it should.
Now, of course, CentOS is primarily used as a server operating system. I mean, our chat room right now is talking about how a couple of them use it as their home server operating system.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I run one, yeah.
I have been working recently with a client who had several Red Hat 5 servers, and their support contracts lapsed.
Oh.
And these systems just fell way behind on patches because when your support contract with Red Hat ends, your updates end.
Right.
And so I got down there. I'm like, look, in good conscience, I cannot deploy this new application that you want to the web with, versions of Apache that haven't been patched since 2006, 2007, whatever it was, 2008.
No, that's not, yeah.
And it's just, way too long. It's just irresponsible at that
point.
Exactly. So one of the great things, though, is because Red Hat Enterprise is supported for an extremely long time, like 4 or 5 plus years, I can't remember, 6 years, something crazy. CentOS is thereby supported for that long. And so what you can actually do, now I don't know if I'd actually recommend you do this out there, folks, but if you're in a hard spot like I was, you can actually go to an old Red Hat Enterprise box, and they're so binary compatible that you can switch all of the Yum repos over to the CentOS equivalent version, do a Yum update.
Makes sense.
Accept a few GPG packages, change a few flags, and boom, you are now running a fully up-to-date and patched CentOS distribution. You can literally just within 10 minutes of work migrate from an old, decrepit Red Hat install to a fully current CentOS install.
That's nice. And while it's not something you're probably going to learn about in school in that case, but I think at the same time it's the greater good. In this particular case, it was more important that it be up to date than we take another approach to it. So I like that. That makes sense.
Yeah, especially when you have a lot of legacy configuration and reloading isn't exactly an option. And if you're on a deadline, this can be done in about 30 minutes.
Yeah. So it was the responsible thing to do, and I love the fact that you're able to do that without having to roll back in the Red Hat direction. You can actually take it upon yourself. That's cool.
The other great thing, one last note about CentOS, is because it's compatible with Red Hat, it makes a fantastic testing center distribution because you can test against it and certify against it and have reasonable surety that your results will be the same when you actually deploy them to a Red Hat server. So a lot of folks in their public space, so like on their public web servers and their public database servers, they'll run Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and then internally on their dev workstations and in their test rigs, they'll run CentOS. So that way they don't have to pay for those.
I like that.
Yeah, so
Makes sense.
It's a great distribution.
Gotta love it.
Okay, a couple of more pieces of homework, and then we'll roll into the news. So I mentioned two different things that I want to give people information about. We have a subreddit that's over at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. You can vote stories, you can submit links, you can ask questions. In fact, several of the questions in our feedback this week came from the subreddit. Matt and I troll there often. So if you want to get something across to us, that's the best way to do it. And also, we have a live stream. We do the show live every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific, which, chat room, if you would put your local time zone, we'll translate in here in a moment. Yeah. You can join us at jblive.tv for the video or jblive.info for the audio, and then you can give us live feedback in the chat room. And so there you go. That's 1 p.m. Eastern, 1300 Eastern. 12 Central, 6 p.m. in the UK. So if you want to join us over at jblive.tv, you can join the big show and give us your feedback live as we do this show. All right, Matt, let's do the news.
What's new in the news?
Matt, the top stories in the news docket are a bunch of new releases we're going to bust through because the open source community has been cranking things out. Don't let anybody tell you the end of September is not a productive month.
This is true.
Top of our list this week, Slackware 14 has been released.
Nice.
Now, this is the release since we've had all the rumors, is Slackware going away? Is something wrong? They had their website down for a while, right?
Yeah, they had some outages, but they're still with us.
So this is from Phronix.com. Slackware 14 offers the choice of XFCE, KDE 4.8, and it also, by the way, didn't mention GNOME on that list. Integrates Linux kernel 3.2.29, so at this point, not the freshest, but a good kernel. I believe there are power regression issues in 3.2, so we'll just have to kind of wait and see how that turns out. There's also some generic kernels available. The other notable things include new GCC 4.7.1, and of course, the support for Network Manager has been added.
Hey! But I mean, that's the cool thing about Slackware is that, whatever's missing, these guys are going to, the users are going to add themselves anyway. So it's no big deal.
I don't mean to sound mocking either, because I mean, Slackware is an important, it's like one of those
old school
milestone releases, right? Like Slackware is like, it's like organic gardening in Linux.
Yeah.
Right?
Seriously.
Yeah. So it's
it's not my cup of tea, but I have crazy respect for it.
Well, you don't like organic food, Matt?
I like organic food, and it's not a big Slackware guy.
No, you don't make any sense.
I do not make any sense, but I do like organic food.
All right, Matt.
Especially bananas.
Well, this is another organic piece of software, one that's been slightly controversial because of the changes to files, aka Nautilus. GNOME 3.6 has been released.
Nice.
Yeah, this actually looks like a pretty solid release if you're a GNOME 3 fan. Big improvements to notifications, including they redesigned the way the message tray works so that hopefully it won't keep grabbing your mouse, like if you need to go down there to do something. And
I'd be nuts. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, now if you hold the super key down and put your mouse down, it'll come up, but otherwise it'll leave you alone. They've changed the files application the most, including built in a very functional file save, or file search capability.
Okay.
And so this is something that they felt like this justified some of the dramatic changes they've made to Nautilus, and they've added the capability to do live
some
file
rhyme
search.
To their reason there. Okay.
A bunch of other new UI improvements. I've linked to a first look that was done over at the H-Online, and they've got a great rundown of a lot of the new features in GNOME 3.6 if you're a big GNOME fan, including a lot of improvements to the disk management utilities, getting a lot more function. So that's cool.
I think that's super. Good for them.
GNOME 3.6. All right, moving right along to our next release. Like I said, we got a small batch we're getting through here, folks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to announce the final edition of OpenWebOS 1.0.
Hey.
And Eagle Eye viewers on Google Plus pinged me and said, "Hey, did you notice that it looks like that video of the WebOS guy? It looks like up in the corner. That's Ubuntu." And it is. If you download the OpenWebOS 1.0 SDK development kit and you get the Intel emulator, it actually the instructions are for setting it up on Ubuntu and running it on Ubuntu.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
So the demo they're doing here in this HP video is of OpenWebOS, which actually looks like it's running really great in this emulator.
Yeah.
You can go get your hands on it right now.
Something to play with.
Something to play with. Now, this is what I'm even more excited about, especially as a Galaxy Nexus owner. OpenWebOS has been ported to the Samsung Galaxy Nexus.
Ooh, nice.
Now, I
like that.
I think this is what they need to do to actually get some traction.
Yes.
The Samsung Galaxy Nexus is a beautiful device.
Yeah.
It is one of my favorite Nexuses that they've made. It no longer has mainstream support from Google.
Right.
So you're kind of stuck unless you go CM, unless you go like CM or something like that.
Sure.
And it is still a very great phone. So this is a perfect thing. People have these probably sitting around so they can try.
This can breathe some new life into that phone.
So I'm going to put my plea out there again. I've got a few suggestions, but if anybody knows a place where I can get my Galaxy Nexus fixed, I want to try this. I know it's the glass on top is fine, like the Gorilla Glass or whatever, but like the digitizer LCD screen underneath is cracked.
Oh, okay. So you need someone who can actually take that apart and correct that issue.
And,
all right.
And I don't if I can ship it somewhere or something. So if anybody knows, email me, chris@jupiterbroadcasting.com or hit me up on Twitter or Google Plus because I would really like to have that fixed. So you can tweet me at ChrisLAS on Twitter.
Yeah, that would be a good deal.
Yeah, that would be really nice because then I would load this and I'll give it a review here on the show.
Well, there you go.
I just got to get that fixed. And it's just too nice of a phone to have sitting around and not have it working. Yeah. They say I'm thinking of a different phone, but I don't. The chat room says they're still supporting it. I don't think so. I don't think you can get. I
was under the impression you were out of luck.
Yeah,
but if you have some links to support, otherwise, we'd certainly be interested.
I might be wrong, but I don't believe you can get it. Now, if I can, I really want to get it fixed.
Yeah.
So, anyways, very cool. OpenWebOS is making some solid progress, and that's very exciting. Cool. All right, Matt.
All right.
So those are the really. We'll wrap up the news segment with another release.
All right.
But why don't we chew on what was the big story last week, and that was the Amazon product placement coming to the Unity Dash search in
mixed
Ubuntu 12.10.
feelings there.
Yeah. We kind of went back and forth on it, and I think we both kind of agreed that the implementation needs to be improved. That it's a little noisy right now.
It does, but there were some improvements that have actually been made already.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, the one big, huge, gigantic improvement is the fact that they have an on-off switch.
Yeah, they're going to make it optional.
That's optional, so that's cool. They're also. I think they're beginning to realize that this makes most sense in specific areas and not necessarily for file searches and software. So that's also good. We'll see what they do with it. I'm going to go on record again and saying that I also really support the way their community manager has handled this thus far because he has received a lot of grief for it. And he stood up and said, look, we hear you, but we're doing this because, quite frankly, we believe this is the right direction to go. And, I think with the right implementation, I agree with him. So,
let's talk about that.
Okay.
I realized something here. Canonical is making money off desktop Ubuntu with Ubuntu One subscriptions and rev shares from the Canonical store.
They are.
And it seems like their number one driver should be revenue from the Software Center, if possible, because that is the best thing for the platform as a whole. Like the Ubuntu Software Center generating more revenue for independent developers writing software for Linux is good for everybody.
Right.
It's making Canonical money. It's making developers money. It's getting more software on Linux. And even if it's Ubuntu first, it moves. The really successful stuff moves. And it's this great win-win for users. It's just awesome. So that seems like that needs to be the primary focus. Whereas integrating these affiliates, while I don't really have a moral objection to it. I feel like it takes the interface down a notch. It's not as classy. It's already a little cluttered and it adds so much noise.
Well, I think if it's kept to video and it's kept to audio, I actually think it adds value. For myself personally, if I'm able to discover new video, such as maybe a new TV show or a new movie, that's adding value.
Yeah.
Now, going back to the software side of it, yes, I agree. That does need to come from the Software Center. And quite frankly, API something in there from the Software Center so that when I'm searching software stuff, it's already kind of there and it's already, they're kind of doing that now, but they're not doing it as effectively as they could. But I don't think they need to take away to still have that benefit. I just think they need to keep the Amazon stuff out of the software space and out of the file space. Then I think people will complain a lot less. It's a pretty simple solution, and it's not like it's that hard to do. There's nothing gained.
Now, when I first heard about this off switch that they're introducing, which will be a setting, you toggle this off, and the Amazon thing goes away. The first thing that I read was that all online services would be stopped. It's like you turn it on, and you can't search Gwibber, you don't search Wikipedia, and you don't get results from Amazon. Do you know if they've changed that?
I do not know, but I do know that I've seen this unfold with other companies, and I can tell you that it will have to happen that way, because what's happening is they're making the mistake that other companies have made in the past, to where they roll something out behind the scenes, people gripe about it, they throw them a bone by throwing an off switch, but they're not.
It goes too far, though.
Well, it goes too far, and more importantly, it's not during the installation. When I'm installing this, I need an option that has a checkbox that says, yes, I agree with this. I'm accept, and I hate to use the word terms of service with a Linux distribution, but I accept these terms of service. I'm good with it. I'm going to click that OK button to include that in my installation, or I'm going to actually uncheck it to not have it.
Well, and as a parent,
really what needs to happen.
And my son uses Ubuntu 12.04 on an MSI netbook right now. This bug was filed as sort of like a tongue-in-cheek, but it actually kind of you think about it, it is kind of a problem. This was an Ubuntu bug, and it says no obvious way to restrict shopping suggestions from displaying adult products.
Yeah, and there isn't. There is no even non-obvious way of doing it.
And then they have screenshots here of like different searches that people have done that have actually returned like
I've tested it out. You'd be
the
surprised.
penis enlargement pump in the dash. Here's some porn DVDs.
Yeah. I mean the blow up dolls. I mean pretty much anything you can think of. There's some crazy stuff out there that you can have show up really easily.
And what's interesting is like traditionally as a parent, my thought on this has always been, well, I'm going to block at the open DNS level.
Yeah.
I'm going to use OpenDNS's filtering to filter out adult content,
Right.
and I don't want to have to manage any software. But the problem is this is doing this API search.
Exactly.
It's just going to products.canonical.com or whatever it is, and then returning results, and it's not going to be filtered out by my traditional DNS attempts.
Right.
So in order now to just avoid this altogether, I just have to completely turn it off.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's going to happen. And that's why I say in the long term, and they probably don't realize this yet. I'm right on this. They will have to address this in a very hard, granular level. It's just unfortunate that I'm watching the front faces, the PR people, the community managers dealing with the brunt of this, while the developers are out there making these mistakes. And I think that's sad because this is so avoidable. And it's it's funny because whoever's leading the direction on this they got the right idea, but they're really not taking it as seriously as they should. They're not looking at big picture.
But they are responding in the sense that since our last episode,
the community managers
they're now encrypting the search queries.
They are,
and the results, which is good. They've addressed some of the privacy concerns, but the reality is what you type is going to be sent to a canonical server.
That's true.
That's just what's going to happen. Here's what I wonder, though, and I still wonder if isn't it just more appropriate to improve the dash experience and keep the results specific to the video lens and the music lens, because then you could also, from a development standpoint, how to categorize those queries. So if I'm in the music lens, you're not going to return porn.
Right.
Whereas when you're just in the dash and just everything that matches a keyword, you're just returning it. It's sloppy. And I'm trying to think of any other desktop operating system that would ship with something that's implemented like that, and I can't think of one. But Ubuntu is, and in Linux desktops, they're free and there's a ton of work. They're very unique. They're not the traditional commercial model, so I understand, but.
And I go back to something I said last week, and that was that while I'm not saying it's overriding one cookie over another, the Amazon cookie is a very powerful thing. It's something that I think that Canonical realizes and that they're actually looking to profit from, so that if someone does stumble upon something that looks visually interesting based on a thumbnail, whatever that shopping trip turns into, they made money on it. So I get it, but I think that it's penny wise, pound foolish. I think they're going to lose out in the long run to get an immediate gain. And I would like to see them correct that. Go with the idea, just pull back just a little bit. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
I agree with you, Matt. I think there's some refinement that can be done. I'm not completely against it totally, but also, it's a hard line to walk, because as a community. And this is something that's been brought up, is the headlines that have, ads pre-installed on Ubuntu.
And that's just crap. That's a stupid. Yeah, and
that's
I've seen
damaging.
Well, and it's nonsense. It's it's a media grab, and it actually makes me mad. I'm actually writing an article in defense of Ubuntu on this for Datamation, specifically about this. Not giving them a free pass on some of the bad implementation, but calling out some of the other guys on some of the hoopla that's been going on about ads being installed. No, it's not ads. It's just sloppy coding. This just needs to be corrected. It's not a bad idea. It just needs to be refined a little. That's all.
Yeah, we'll see. There's a video that cropped up online this week called "The Evolution of Ubuntu." And it showed from the first version of Ubuntu to what we have in development now with 12.10. And one thing that struck me with that video is they really do take gambles in the long-term supports. They do. And there have been a few major ones now watching this video that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember getting really upset about that. And then
Unity,
yeah, they refined it by the time I got to the long-term support. Hopefully that'll happen here.
I think so. I think so. And I really genuinely believe that. As much grief I've given them over the years on certain things and then seen them corrected, I think they will, and I'm going to stand with them on this. I'm standing with them with the understanding that they're going to correct this, but I'm not going to judge them based on this release. So
it would be interesting to see if the results are positive, like if Canonical can double down on Unity's development and fix some of the things that I wish they were paying a little more attention to. Like the dash is still too slow. I mean, we'll wait. I'll see what 12.10's final code is going to look like in our review. But I just think there's other areas they need to focus on. Maybe this revenue will give them the flexibility to hire a few more people and.
Yeah, and that's just it. It is a revenue situation. They're not doing this because they want to serve you ads. They're not doing this because they're wanting to be irritating. They're trying to fund the development of this experience.
Yeah,
and so that's understandable.
Yeah. All right, so moving on, I think we've probably beat that one enough, but it's been an interesting story to follow, and we'll just see where it goes, right? I mean, 12.10 is not that far away. Yep. It's just a few weeks out, so these are the final days here. We're getting real close to shipping code.
I'm excited. I'm interested to see what they got.
Speaking of shipping code, we actually could be seeing something from Valve very soon. On their official Valve software blog, they said things have been going well, and they've already, they are starting the week this episode comes out, an internal Valve test. So friends and family internally in their operation, and then they'll be rolling out to another 1,000 external testers sometime in October. The private external beta will include your copy of Steam,
I love it.
One Valve game, I'm assuming Left 4 Dead.
I would think that would be my go-to.
And support for Ubuntu 12.04 or above. Not yet included will be Big Picture mode and some of the other games. The external private beta will be good for seeing how these games are running on Linux. They want to get a good variety of hardware, and they'll be throwing up a sign-up page for the external beta with information on how to sign up in a future blog post, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah,
it's coming very soon.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm actually so. One of the things they said there is Ubuntu 12.04 and up. That kind of to me sounds like they're going to be supporting Ubuntu 12.10.
I would think so.
So my question to you, Matt, is this week I'll be reloading one of my machines.
Okay.
And we have a 12.10 review coming up in a few weeks.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Do you think I should just go Ubuntu 12.10?
I would, as many updates as I've seen rolling out, I would actually wait on that. And here's why. Just yesterday, I think I updated, I don't know, like 100 packages. And that's good, because these are all things that are being improved upon and fixed upon. Yeah. And upon doing so, I immediately noticed a speed increase. So, sit on it for a little bit. Wait till at minimum a release candidate, because we're still very much in that beta stage.
Yeah.
And then, of course, for myself, my rule with any Linux distribution, especially with like Ubuntu, is on your daily machine, stick to a release that's been out for a while, preferably a long term. If you're not going to go long term, at least give it a few months to get all the bugs out. And, do your testing on a secondary box.
There you go. All right, Matt. Now, this next news story really caught me by surprise.
Okay.
I saw some rumblings from a Linux developer on his blog saying, wow, the Unity team, Unity, the 3D engine developers.
Not the desktop.
Thank you. Reached out to me. They were super cool. They helped us, and this is a Kickstarter developer. They helped us really figure out how to get Linux ported, or how to get our Linux port rolling. And so we're just rolling Linux support right out. It's not a stretch goal. We're just going straight with Linux support. I thought, okay, I got to look into this.
Yeah.
So I went over to the Unity 3D team's blog and found this amazing blog post by a couple of their folks who are working in-house to make the Unity engine work on Linux. And they posted a video.
Oh yeah,
that is inspiring to listen to. So I think we're going to play it. It's cool. Like 2.5 minutes long, and it's really awesome. So here, I'll roll this for you guys.
Yeah, we just decided to start working on this port just because we're Linux enthusiasts. We both use Linux at home as our desktop operating system, and have been for the last more than 10 years.
Yeah, since the late 90s anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Since the era where it was really, really painful. So
Linux is a great platform. You've got the whole open thing going. You can do just anything you want. You can configure every single thing about your desktop. And that's the most compelling thing about Linux. If there's a bug, you can fix it yourself. If there's something that's not exactly the way you like it, you can change it yourself. It's very, very cool. It gives the user absolute control. There's a lot of exciting developments. We've got Steam announced that they're coming for Linux. We've got Humble Indie Bundles are exploding right now. They make these collections of games that people can buy, and it's pay what you want, and the money goes to developers, it goes to charities. There are little sliders, you can decide how everything goes. But one of the requirements is the games have to run on Windows, they have to run on Mac, they have to run on Linux. And so up until now, this has been kind of a closed door for Unity users. The Linux support will enable us to open that door. There are also channels like the Ubuntu Software Center that are increasing in popularity, so it's a good time for games on Linux.
A few really successful games that I can think of, 2D Boy with World of Goo.
Yeah, and also Frictional Games had both the Penumbra and Amnesia series that did well on Linux as well.
Yeah, and the indie game Braid has been phenomenally successful, both in the indie bundle and also on the Ubuntu Software Center.
So another thing that we're seeing as a result of this is the explosion of Kickstarter games, promising Linux ports that when they've already chosen Unity, or choosing Unity because they can promise a Linux port now. Wastelands, Clang.
Yeah, they're just exploding left and right. A huge number of Kickstarters that have already chosen Unity. Being able to do something that is going to produce content that will make it more enjoyable to use this platform we support is a very, I guess, fulfilling kind of thing, even though it sounds kind of corny. It's so often been in the case in the past that the availability of games determines whether or not a new platform can succeed.
Yeah.
So we are hoping that by working on this and doing this, we'll be able to help bridge that gap and give developers a way that they can reach out to this group of users that really does want to play games, and the statistics we have show that they want to and they're willing to pay for them. So we hope that it can both be beneficial to our customers because they're going to have a new market that they can hopefully get some revenue from, and also beneficial to Linux users in general.
So how cool is that? Yeah,
Love it.
yeah. I really thought that that was really good to hear. I mean, it sounds like there's advocates working within that company, and
people that get Linux.
yeah,
That's
and
so cool.
and also like how I so like when she said, you know, this proves that there's people out there who are on Linux that want video games and they'll pay for them. I was like,
Right.
I'm so glad a gaming company is, you know, it's not just Valve.
Exactly.
Right? Other companies are recognizing this. And how perfect is it that we have Valve, which
Yeah.
has the Source engine and Steam coming to Linux, and you have Unity, which is, you know, awesome at developing games for mobile, for desktop, for all, and even for the web.
So it really provides a ton of options. It's fantastic. I mean, this is I think we're going to see an explosion. It's going to happen.
These are two
really do.
systems that work well for Linux. We'll see on the Source. And I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just going to
No, that's good.
And they are easy for the developer to port to target Linux with. Both Unity
Exactly.
and the Source engine are going to make it much easier for developers. So it's really opening the potentials here.
Well, it's removing the excuses of, oh, well, you know, the tools aren't there. Well, you know, there's not enough people there. There it is. You know, you've got two very clear signs that it's
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's time.
All right, Matt. This last news story is we started with release announcements and we'll end with a release announcement. Brace yourself for this. I don't think you saw this one coming, Matt. The Ubuntu Software Center has been ported to OpenSUSE.
Oh, for Pete's sake. Seriously.
You know, because it relies a lot on package kit.
Sure,
So it's
sure,
doable,
but-
right? And he noted, by the way, that he was able to speed it up and clean it up a lot.
Okay. Well,
Which, when you think about it, it could use that.
that
Yeah.
probably need. Yeah, I'm glad.
So
he did.
here it is.
Glad
Here's a
he did.
screenshot of it running on KDE4 on OpenSUSE,
I like
and
that.
it's pointing to their own back-end repos.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, that's cool.
I don't know if
I mean,
don't.
if they're, okay, so they offered me value in that they cleaned it up and sped it up. Hey,
You know,
that's
there
cool.
are
All right.
there are better looking, more functional package.
You know,
managers.
there was a package manager once called Click and Run that to date still looks better than the.
Oh man!
I'm just saying. I'm just
Oh,
saying.
man.
I'm not saying I'm a Linspire guy. I'm just saying they to date, even now, they still did certain things better in their package management than and it was apt-get. Don't get me wrong. It was still the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but
Oh, yeah.
it was for Pete's sake.
I know.
Yeah, whatever.
I know.
Anyway, and you guys okay, I'm going to let it go.
Well, you know who else has a very unique approach to package management? PC-BSD.
They do. Oh, now see that. Yes.
See? So
Yeah.
maybe we should go review.
Let's go
PC-BSD.
review that because I like what they're doing on that. That's
All right,
cool.
Matt. Well, that's all the news for this week. All right, Matt, it's time to talk about PC-BSD. Now, before we get to that, and we've got a great review coming up, I want to thank System76 for sponsoring this segment. They are the premier manufacturer of Ubuntu-ready machines.
Absolutely.
And they have sent us to play with, and we love it. We use this thing for all kinds of testing, and because of the hardware they select, runs for a long, long time with Linux. It's a safe box to throw things on. You're not going to have any hardware surprises. And we've been playing with their Wild Dog Performance PC, but I think what a lot of you probably are interested in their laptops, and they do have a deal that ends in September. You can get a free upgrade to a 750 gig hard drive, or get yourself a 500 gigabyte hybrid hard drive.
Oh, see, that's where you want to go right there. Yeah,
I know, right?
Especially on a laptop.
Yeah. You heard, there's Alan. I'll put my headphones on. There he is, Mr. Alan Jude from TechSnap, who is a FreeBSD man. And in fact, we've joked on and off on TechSnap that we should come up with a show called the FreeBSD Stability Show. And
I love it. I love that.
Because Alan's Scale Engine network runs almost exclusively on FreeBSD, so we thought we'd bring him in, especially the audience. The audience wanted you here too, Alan, for this review. And now all of us have tried PC-BSD over the years, correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay, but it's been a little while for me personally. So I thought I would start with, let's just back up and kind of talk about what makes PC-BSD unique. It's not necessarily, Alan, would you say I could get away with calling it almost, it's a distribution of FreeBSD? Is that legit? What would you call it?
Kind of, yeah. Basically, it's FreeBSD underneath, unmodified, and then they just stack their tools on top of it.
Which is actually kind of compelling because then it lets you have vanilla FreeBSD with a nice UI on top of it.
Yeah, and it's the installer does a lot of things for you, and they provide a lot of tools that make some of the traditionally harder to do things easier.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about a couple of them. Why don't we start with the PBIs, because I think that's what they're really well known for. And when I think of PBIs, I almost think of them as like .app bundles on the Mac in a sense, where they pull down everything they need with them. So you get a Chrome PBI and you run that PBI and it pulls down all of the libraries that Chrome needs. It pulls down the binary, it sets up the directory, it sets up the shortcuts for the user, and it's all self-contained within its own folder structure.
Yeah, like I always pictured the PBIs as like the Windows.MSI.
Yeah.
Because basically, PC-BSD is kind of designed as a Windows replacement for enterprise, right? If you're a business and you want to replace your Windows machines, the idea is to try to provide the easiest transition as possible. That's why the main desktop environment is KDE, because that's most like Windows.
Yeah.
And the idea with PBIs was it was the same mechanism you were used to on Windows. If you wanted a program, you go to the website, you download this single file, you double click on it, and you get a little pop-up window, and you click next, 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 finish, and it's installed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was the workflow that people coming from Windows were used to.
It does feel very much, because there's an install wizard. It feels very much like a Windows install.
It does.
Yeah. Although now with the newer versions, they have the App Cafe, which is kind of analogous to like your Ubuntu Software Center or
the Apple Store,
App Store or whatever. And it kind of basically makes it a little easier to find the PBI files. It
does, yeah. It has search and it categorizes them, and it's pretty efficient. Yeah. Why don't we start?
I guess the most important feature of the PBIs is the fact that dependencies are self-contained.
Yes.
Yeah.
So unlike traditional package systems where you try to install an app and it's like, well, you can't install this right now because your version of OpenSSL is older than what this app requires. But if we upgrade your version of OpenSSL, we'll also have to upgrade all your other apps that use OpenSSL, which is everything, basically. And at some point, you get some app that isn't ready for the new version, and it breaks everything. With the PBI, each of basically the shared libraries that it would depend on, each app contains their own private copy. So you can upgrade individual apps without touching the other apps.
And that's very nice.
A lot more of you basically no chance of dependency hell, and no chance that some upgrade is going to break some other app that you weren't meaning to touch during the upgrade.
Now, the PBI authors need to make sure they keep their packages updated, so that way they get those libraries updated if there's a flaw that's found in a version or something like that.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about our experience using it as a desktop? Because I ran into a few snags.
As did I.
And Matt, why don't you start with what was your primary snagafoo?
Well, I've run this in the past, and I was actually at one point. Apparently, Wikipedia actually used a quote in an article that I wrote that I said that, hey, this is where it's at for newbies looking to experience a new desktop. And at the time, I definitely felt that way. Trying it here recently, I did run into a couple of hiccups that from installing it on a virtual machine where I had some challenges there, and also a couple of hardware related snags. But then again, the way that hardware is done is apples and oranges. This is not Linux. They have their own way of doing things. They have their own compatibility. I was not able to get it to actually install on anything I had.
What do you mean? You couldn't get the whole desktop?
I could not get. I was able to run the live CD successfully, and I was able to play with it, but I was not able to get the internet. And I don't mean this to sound as negative as it's coming across. I'm a big fan of what they're doing. I'm a big fan of the goals. I just felt like that maybe I was putting the wrong hardware into play, perhaps. I don't know. But I did try a few things, and I'm definitely looking forward to the release candidate, 9.1, because I think that's going to be exciting. But I wasn't able to get as much as I wanted from the 9.0 release.
So I ran into snags with 9.0 as well. Like there's information screens in KDE that came up with error pages instead of the actual information. I had an update that failed to install. So I went ahead and I just kind of aborted 9.0, and I just jumped up to 9.1, the release candidate. And I got that installed on my HP NV17. Everything worked except for a couple of key critical pieces of hardware. The wireless didn't work. Not too unexpected. Most Linux distributions don't nail my wireless either.
Well.
And Windows doesn't out of the box as well. The video card, however, is an ATI Radeon 7000 series, and I could only get the VESA driver to work. But it functioned. I got the full 1920 by 1080 resolution of my laptop display. The power management, I think, because of that, wasn't so good for the video card, so my graphics ran pretty hot and the fan was always going. So I found snags with the KDE version. So I kind of pivoted and I transitioned to GNOME 2.0.
Oh yeah,
because they've actually PC-BSD at the install time says, do you want to do a KDE desktop? Do you want to do an XFCE?
Which
LXDE?
I love that as an option.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
really cool. Yeah, during the install, you have a number of options. You can do KDE, GNOME, LXDE, or XFCE. And actually, there are two other options. There's TrueOS, which is a command line server.
Okay.
It's FreeBSD, but they've added the PBI system, command line version of the Warden tool, which is what we'll get into in a minute here.
Yeah.
And a couple other features from PC-BSD, but it's still your command line server. And it's called TrueOS.
Yeah, that is nice.
And then there's also the option from their DVD to install vanilla FreeBSD, because all they have to do for that is install PC-BSD without the PC-BSD part, right? Because it's just FreeBSD with the layer on top.
Yeah, yeah.
And the advantage with that is the FreeBSD installer is like a text GUI, right? You get it's menu driven, whereas the PC-BSD one is graphical. And the PC-BSD one admittedly has the ability to allow you to do a root on ZFS install.
That's awesome.
And a couple of other features as far as setting up your disk before you do the install. The PC-BSD install is actually easier.
Now, what do you think? Would it be... See, I chose to do UFS because I was just doing one hard drive, root partition. I didn't really... Is it worth doing ZFS if I'm doing more than one hard drive?
Even with just one hard drive.
If I'm just doing one hard drive, yeah.
There are some advantages, especially if you're going to be doing the jails thing. We'll talk about using the ZFS features like snapshots and cloning to manage your basically your virtual jails.
Okay.
But also you get the silent corruption detection with the hashing of everything. You get the increased performance if you have a little bit of RAM to spare for an ARC cache, and also it can do the compression. You know, your ports tree is like 600 megabytes that actually compresses down to about 50 of tiny little text files.
That's actually not a bad idea.
When you have the source code for the OS installed, you can have that compressed as well. And you have the option of using like gzip or LZHA, depending on what type of files you're putting in each thing. So by making a bunch of these different directories, different data sets in ZFS, you can apply different features to them. Another thing you could do is you can say on your home directory, copies equals 2, I want every file on here to basically be in 2 different places on the hard drive just in case.
See, these features, combined, these features that Alan's talking about with the file system, combined with like the utilityness of GNOME 2, I think make PC-BSD like nearly a slam dunk for an enterprise grade workstation operating system, because if you're doing a lot of data and you have large data sets and you want the protection that ZFS gives you, you want the efficiency of GNOME 2. And here's the thing about PC-BSD is like Alan said, is it's sitting on top of vanilla FreeBSD. And Alan, how long is a release of FreeBSD generally supported for?
Depends on the version, but usually about 2 years.
So you essentially get a long-term support there.
The upgrades between the minor versions are very simple. Like they're basically binarily compatible. Like so, if you're going from 9.0 to 9.1 to 9.2, all those are binary compatible upgrades. It's only the major versions that are where you have to basically worry about shared libraries changing, and so you're basically almost getting a much bigger span than that.
So you look at this. Okay, so you've got. So let's just say you could go with XFCE. They have a fine XFCE desktop too. I just thought it was kind of fun to go back into GNOME 2. Yeah. You combine that with the App Cafe that makes it easy for your power users to install things like Chromium. And yeah, it's a version behind, or P2V. It's 2 versions behind, or Handbrake, it's 2 versions behind. But you know, it's still in there, and it's still super easy to install. You give it, you know, like an HP workstation type hardware. You give it ZFS, and then you take, and I think this might be the secret recipe here, IX Systems and their enterprise expertise and their path with integration with FreeNAS and all these kinds of things, their hardware solutions and their capability to deliver support to the enterprise. This, to me, seems like for an engineer or somebody like that, this could be a really awesome long-term supported enterprise-grade desktop.
I would agree completely.
Honestly, that's the target for PC-BSD is enterprise. And IX Systems builds hardware specifically designed to work with PC-BSD, right?
Okay.
And it's basically the same idea as System 76. But the hardware compatibility is not quite that bad. For a video card, though, you do want to stick with an NVIDIA because NVIDIA makes FreeBSD specific drivers. Like, they make them themselves.
Right.
It's not an open source thing. It's the real legitimate NVIDIA drivers, and they're just loaded into the kernel and ready to go. Right now, the support for ATI is not that good.
Yeah, I got it to work, but I knew that going into it. I did my research, did my education, make sure that I'm going into it with an open
not going to bang your head against the wall.
No. I expected certain things to behave certain ways based on the fact that I was more testing the envelope with like ATI, but NVIDIA worked fine. My challenge was with
9.1 and 9.2. The Intel built-in graphics support is getting much better.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Basically, that's being backported from FreeBSD 10, which is super developmental still. But the full Intel graphics support is on the way.
Now, did you guys catch
mostly there?
So before we get to Warden, why don't we talk about one more graphical thing that they kind of do this nice? Is they have this PC-BSD control panel, which it looks like the KDE control panel. Basically,
it has the tools you need in front of you. Yeah.
One of the things they have in here, though, is Life Preserver, which is a wizard, kind of like that sync back that I talked about. That it's meant to work in conjunction with FreeNAS, but it's really just something that goes over SSH, and it allows you to configure local backups, and it has a little applet that schedules them and monitors and sends your backups off to a remote system. It includes an X configuration wizard in here, and one of the other things that it lets you do, there's a wizard in here that lets you go out and grab the FreeBSD ports tree. So it'll actually download the entire port tree for you, and then you can start rocking those ports, which is really cool.
That is awesome.
But one of the tools in here, Alan, that I think piqued your interest is Warden. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. So Warden is basically there's a graphical and a command line version, but it's a tool for managing jails. In FreeBSD, we have this system called jails, which is basically a second install of the entire operating system in some subdirectory, and then you basically start it inside a chroot.
It's a root.
Yeah. So basically, it shares the kernel with the running system, but it provides you a completely different root file system, basically. All your processes are isolated, and all the users and groups that exist in the jail are completely isolated, and everything is separated that way. Even the network stack is separated. So basically, you give your jail an IP address, which can just be an extra one on your loopback if you don't want it to have access to the internet at all. Or, you set up with an internal address and it can go out with NAT, or you can give it a real public address, depending on what your use case is.
So the chat room's asking, how is a FreeBSD jail different than just a standard chroot on Linux?
You're running the entire operating system in the chroot. Like, it's starting init inside the chroot.
And it has its own IP. And it has
its own IP, its own separate user space. So like there's a separate root user in the jail. And I can have a user with user ID 1000 that has a different username than my user that has ID 1000 outside of the jail.
And what's cool about Warden is it'll give you a wizard where it'll say what Linux distro do you want, and let you choose between Debian or Gentoo, and it'll ask you the root password.
Oh,
all right. Okay.
Right, because
go ahead. No, go ahead. I won't step on you. Go ahead.
By default, when you start and build a jail, it's FreeBSD. Right?
Oh, right. Of course. Yeah.
Yes. But basically, when you go to create a jail, you have 3 options. One is a traditional jail, which is really designed for running applications isolated. The idea is if you want to run an Apache server, don't run it on your host OS. Run it in a jail, because a jail is kind of like having it in a virtual machine, except for you have 100% hardware performance because it's not actually virtualized. But what happens is if someone manages to compromise your Apache or some PHP app that you're running as part of Apache, they're stuck in the jail.
They're contained.
And there's nothing in there except for Apache, so they can't get out and muck around with everything else. And so, if you have separate jails for each service, then they're completely isolated.
And what's nice is, like, opposed to virtualization, you're getting raw hardware performance, too.
Exactly. And that way you can separate everything. Also, Warden provides meta packages. So with one click, you click under the Packages tab on a jail and check off, Apache, PHP, MySQL, and zap. It installs the packages for you, and you have a full FAMP stack ready to go.
Yeah. I've got the Warden tool visual loaded here when you're ready. So you let me know. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. So the second option you have is what's called a ports jail, which is specifically designed to be less secure, but the idea is that if you want to use ports, you don't want to try to mix and match that with the PBI system, right? If you try to have, as that random guy from ZDNet who made that a fool of himself the one time by trying to install, Yum on a Debian box?
Yeah.
You don't want to try to mix and match your package managers. So what a ports jail lets you do is you have your ports tree and a bunch of your apps from the ports tree installed in this jail, which is basically just a subdirectory on your host OS. But then from the host OS, you go into that directory and you run the applications. So it allows you to run like even X applications from that you install from the ports tree on the host OS without mixing up with your PBIs.
That's nice.
And it also allows you, as an option, to have multiple different versions of the same app installed using different jails.
Right.
So the nice thing with FreeBSD and the ports tree is that it's updated daily. So, the newest version of Chromium is probably there.
Mm-hmm. Whereas with PBIs, they start to fall
PBIs
behind.
lag a little bit behind.
Yeah.
And so it gives you the ability to do that. Or the other thing with the ports tree is they, for a lot of apps, they'll have more than one version available. Right? Like, obviously, for MySQL server, they have 5.0, 5.1, 5.5, etc. But also for a tool like FFmpeg, they have the main stable version, a development snapshot, and the release candidate for 1.1. And you can choose to install any of those or all 3 of them. And, again, the major option with the ports tree over a binary package is the compile time options. You get to choose them.
Yes.
So, I need my FFmpeg install to include support for speaks, which isn't there by default, because I'm going to be transcoding some stuff recorded by Flash, and that uses the speaks codec. Mm-hmm. And so that gives you that option. But the third and possibly the most interesting option with FreeBSD jails is a Linux jail. So FreeBSD, as we've talked about before, has Linux binary compatibility. It's basically a kernel module that you load into the FreeBSD kernel, and it translates Linux-only system calls into FreeBSD system calls, and allows you to take any Linux binary and run it on your FreeBSD machine. And normally, to support that, it installs in a subdirectory like userlibcompat or whatever, your basically a base install of Fedora, because that was the distro they chose to start with. And it allows you to basically run your binary Linux apps. But a lot of Linux apps now depend more on specific features of distributions, right? Like they'll install Debian style init scripts, or they expect this binary to be in this place, or this feature to be over here.
Yeah.
And they sometimes the apps just don't want to run in a FreeBSD environment. So with a Linux jail, what you do is you basically install a full Linux install. They have templates for Debian 6 and Gen 2 Stage 2 something that come with PC-BSD. And basically, you get your full install of Debian in a subdirectory, and then you start the Debian init process. So Debian barely realizes that it's actually not running on a Linux kernel.
And it looks like you can start that at boot up too. That's
yeah, you can. And so
basically, you create these jails, and they're kind of like your virtual machines, except for they're not actually virtual. And you can set them to as a service to start at boot and so on.
So I have a Debian jail running right here, Alan, and this is it says when I do a uname, I actually get the FreeBSD kernel, and when I cat etsy issue, I get Debian GNU K FreeBSD 6.0.
That's cool. I like that. That's pretty cool.
And I'm essentially living in a Debian installation that isn't running in virtualization, which is really neat about it. It's
totally having your cake and eating it.
It's sharing. Really. Look, if you do the uname, it's sharing the kernel here with the FreeBSD system.
I like that.
Yeah. And so there's no overhead of even running two kernels. So it's even better than like hyper virtualization.
Right.
Yeah.
Para virtualization and so on.
Crazy efficient.
Right.
I mean,
yes.
Really.
And, you know, as we've seen from a couple of reviews, sometimes FreeBSD is faster than Linux at running Linux.
Yep. Oh, my goodness. Now we're going to get the flame war going.
Yeah, I've actually seen that happen.
Yeah.
But more specifically, you're now running Debian on top of a kernel ZFS.
Right. Wow. Right. And that is actually really compelling. In fact, that makes me, maybe that would be the route to go. I might redo a server thing that I've just done recently. That's okay. All right.
It kind of puts a whole new perspective on what we know is reality. It just totally shifts at that point.
The other thing is because if you're doing your Warden and jail installs on top of ZFS, you get other features you normally only get from virtualization, like the ability to take a snapshot of your jail, make a change, try it, and then roll it back if you don't like it.
Yes, in fact, they even this Warden tool, Alan, really, in my opinion, takes it for people that I've heard of FreeBSD jails. I've heard you talk about them on TechSnap and how you use them for Scale Engine, but this tool actually makes them accessible to somebody like me who's never actually got down to actually doing it. The snapshot feature.
Well, it provides a granular experience to where you can see action reaction. It's like I'm trying to accomplish X by doing Y, and I think it provides that. Provides that experience for you. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I really dig this.
You can say, make a snapshot once a day and keep the last 10 days worth, or once an hour and keep the last 36 hours worth.
Oh man!
And then you can also mount one of the older snapshots and just extract a file out of it, or you can create what's called a clone, which is basically a snapshot, but you can write to it. So basically, you're like, I have this Apache jail working perfectly for running this app, but I'd like to run this other app, so I just clone it and then swap out the app or whatever. Or if you want to do a developmental version and try and upgrade without touching the other one, and you can do all kinds of things like that. And then the other thing is also, along with being able to point and click and install meta packages from outside the jail, instead of going in the jail and using the package manager to install Apache, from Warden, you just click and install Apache. You can also manage the services that are running in a FreeBSD jail. It doesn't work for the Linux one, but I installed Nginx in my BSD jail, and then from the menu here, I can then enable and disable different services.
Wow.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's that granular control. That's really cool.
And you can create and manage users and groups inside the jail from outside with a GUI, which is something you really didn't have before.
There you go. I mean,
you can manage the updates separately because the jails are a completely separate install of the OS. You can update them separately.
Oh,
or
no
you
kidding.
Can update the jail first to make sure it works before you update your host system.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
I'm liking that.
It really, you could see how Alan uses jails in his daily practice for different customers have like Jupiter Broadcasting. Don't we have like our own jail on Scale Engine that we live in?
Not exactly, but yes, kind of.
Or
all the PHP code for your website is executed in a series of jails on different machines. And yeah, those are locked down so that if there's some exploit for WordPress that ends up you didn't update your WordPress quickly enough or whatever, if that gets exploited, they're stuck in this tiny little container that doesn't have anything in it.
And does that entire jail run as a Jupiter Broadcasting user? Essentially, is like all one user, or does that jail itself run as
root? We don't quite do it that way. For the PHP jails, the way we do it is we have one jail on each machine that handles PHP, and then with PHP FPM, we have a separate user that runs a separate pool of PHP
yeah.
processes
Sure.
just for Jupyter Broadcasting.
Sure. Okay.
And one that runs a separate pool just for Jupyter Colony. Actually, even Jupyter Broadcasting and Jupyter Colony have separate users.
Wow. Okay. That's cool.
I love the containment. To me, that
and
just screams
the other
efficiency.
the
That's
other
cool.
nice thing about the containment
Yeah.
is Warden and jails in general have the ability to do an export.
Yes.
So I have a jail, it's running, I stop it, I can export it, I can move it to a different machine,
Right.
import it, and it runs. So, you know, when I was doing some hardware upgrades, I had some old machines that only had 8 gigs of RAM, and I decided I'm going to stop this service that's in this jail, pick it up, move it over to this new machine with 96 gigs of RAM.
I love that. And to me, I visualize a firefly in a jar.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
And then I'm going to bring it over from this location to that. I
Yeah,
mean, that's
totally.
just really cool.
Exactly.
love
Now
it.
it has a much bigger cage to live in.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
so basically, it's the same idea as you would have with migrating a virtual machine, except for it's not virtualized again.
So let me ask you this,
It
Alan.
doesn't
'cause
quite let you do it live, but pretty close.
these are really great features, and you could tell how like an enterprise or a business could use these things. But as a desktop user, there's a lot of functionality here. But I know you opt not to use PC-BSD as your day-to-day desktop. What is it missing for you? Like, is there some sort of feature you ran in during your tryout that you're like, this is a perfect example of why I don't use this?
Not really. Mostly the reason that I still have a Windows system is because, you know, things like my webcam and Skype work better on Windows, and I still play games the odd time.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And that's what I wonder is, you know, I don't think I would recommend PC-BSD for enthusiasts that want maybe Ubuntu for BSD. 'Cause it's not really that, but it really is it's taking FreeBSD and making it accessible. And if you're comfortable with BSD or you want to get into BSD, it seems like the ideal solution. Or if you're an enterprise deployment and you want a great workstation OS.
It kind of fits with the discussion you had this morning about CentOS as
Exactly.
a desktop
Okay.
for. It's like, you know, where's the long-term support version of Fedora? PC-BSD is the same idea. It's a desktop / workstation for more your enterprise idea, right? PC-BSD is basically designed to replace Windows in a business.
Okay, right.
At IX Systems, where they build servers and desktops and sell it, and they support PC-BSD and FreeNAS and so on, everybody there works every day on PC-BSD, right? They do all of their work on PC-BSD. And so that's why the features that are the most polished are the ones you need to do your job every day.
That makes sense. I mean, when you're serving something like that up, you want to eat your own dog food for you know.
That's
so
great
that
they
makes
do
sense.
that too. They should.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, awesome.
And so, yeah, it's much more of a workstation than a desktop.
Right.
But it's getting there, especially with the Intel graphics support coming.
Yeah.
I think it'll start to become more and more compelling.
That's cool.
And, you know,
any other
just
thoughts on PC-BSD?
root on ZFS is a very cool feature. And the main difference is you can do that on FreeBSD, but even on FreeBSD, that's not that easy to set up. Like you start the installer, you have to drop to the shell mode and basically configure it all yourself, and then go back into the installer and have it install the OS. With the wizard in PC-BSD, it does it all for you.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
optionally, it'll also even do more complex setups where you use Geli, the encryption library.
Okay.
So you can encrypt the whole disk and then run ZFS on top of that, or UFS.
All right, one last question for you, Alan. If one day, like, say, the game you needed or the webcam support was awesome and you threw your hands up and said, okay, I'm going to switch to BSD as my desktop, would you go with PC-BSD or would you just install straight up FreeBSD and then just load the desktop environment you want?
Now that they have the ports jails, so that I could still do whatever I wanted from ports, instead of having to rely on PBIs, I could now use PC-BSD. You know,
Interesting.
If I get to the point where I have a separate computer that I do for my work, and then I have my Windows box at home, but if I spend my days in an office working on a PC, it will run PC-BSD.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Great.
All right, guys. Well, I think that, any other thoughts?
That pretty much covers it. I mean, as you pointed out, one thing I wanted to ask about hardware compatibility was that my experience is, generally speaking, at least with previous versions, it was pretty good.
Yep.
I never really had, and I suspect it's probably just the configuration I had was a little wonky. But any thoughts on why it might have went bonkers when I was trying to install it with VirtualBox? Because to me that just seemed very
I did
VirtualBox and Orient.
I did 2 installs in VirtualBox this morning with no issues.
Did you see? And it was weird.
And
It's the craziest
actually,
thing. Yeah.
I didn't remember to mention it, but on their website they offer pre-made
Right.
Oh.
VirtualBox and
Well, they're
VMware
right.
images.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm doing it wrong. Okay.
But I did the install from the DVD into VirtualBox, and it was
well.
easy
And
to-
I figured, okay, I'll do a fixed disk because that just keeps it simple. And I made sure I had enough space, enough size, and all that good stuff. And it started. I started watching it mount directories. Like directories were starting to mount, and they just
Like on the
Nautilus instances were just popping up all over the place.
Whoa!
So I may try and recreate that and maybe send that off as a bug or something.
You know what can cause that is when the VirtualBox Editions is trying to install and the auto CD run thing will start. It'll start popping up a bunch of windows.
I'll bet you that's it.
I had it working okay under VMware Workstation.
So it sounds like it's a virtual box and a MAT issue, not a PS.
Awesome.
And on my laptop it worked fine with the wireless and
for
except
the
wireless and
for the
video.
full release versions, they have pre-made VirtualBox and VMware images in case you want to just
That's
run
what
it in
I'm gonna
VirtualBox.
do. Yeah.
And it's although I was using 9.1 release candidate, and so
Right.
for release candidate they just have the DVD image.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's,
Okay.
that's what I
They they offer quite a few different images compared to even FreeBSD. They have
Right.
your regular CD and DVD. They have a live DVD. Then they have the USB, the live USB, and then a USB Lite, which I think is only includes the lighter desktop managers, not KDE.
I might check into that.
If you have
Yeah.
a smaller USB stick,
Yeah.
right? Like, not
I've got
everybody.
a lot of them.
That would be a lot faster than install from the
32
CD.
gig USB stick, but
good.
like for FreeBSD installs, I had this old 1 gig I got from the college when I was a student, and it's got the 700 megabyte USB stick image on it, and it's enough to install a server because you don't need any apps when you're on the server.
Right, for sure. You don't need all the fluff. Absolutely.
All right, there you go. Well, there you go. That's the Linux Action Show's look at PC-BSD. That brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Now, before we get out of here, before we run, why don't we cover a little bit of feedback?
Let's cover some feedback.
I want to mention, if you got lost at all during that last segment, we have a lot more on our PC-BSD review in the show notes. Alan's put some bullet points about the things that he covered in there. Yep. I jotted down my thoughts on PC-BSD as well. You can find links to some of the things we covered in the show notes for this week's episode. So if you missed any of that or went over your head or you want to read more, go over to this week's episode.
We're talking bite-sized pieces, easy to digest. Just read as you go.
All right, so we got a couple of submissions this week. In fact, in between the segments, I eliminated two because we've actually already ended up covering them in this week's episode. So we'll start with what I've got left, and this one comes in, and I bet this is something a lot of people suffer. So we're relating. It was submitted to the subreddit by Volma. I'm not even going to try. Not even going to try. It says, I have the best questions and feedback, but I forget them before I get home. So, he's commuting, listening to Linux Action Show. Right. Well, now the Android apps that we have available do allow you to send feedback from your mobile phone, but I don't want you typing and driving.
No, there'll be no typing and driving.
No typing and driving allowed. So we set up a phone number you can call. So you can call us 1-860-Linux51.
Yep.
1-860-Linux51, and you just call us at that number. I'll check it next week and see if we have any voicemails for the show.
I think that's
might be a fun way. So if you come up with something, if we say something, just hit pause, dial. Now do it safely, maybe with your hands
pull
free.
over to a designated area, make the call.
come on.
You can even set up on speed dial.
Who's gonna do
Or
that?
if you really want to, you can put your feet up on the dashboard, lay back, dial in the air. Whatever you want to do, but make sure you're not running anyone over.
Probably the best thing to do would be to add 1-860-Linux51 to your phone book, and that way you can just, hands-free that sucker.
Earpiece.
Yep. Yeah. So there you go. Give us a ring. And right now it's a totally non-set-up Google Voice number, so hopefully it'll take voicemail. I'll have to check on that. And then you can leave us your thoughts there, and we can try to get them into the show. All right. So we talked a little bit about Unity, the 3D engine. We talked a little about Unity, the desktop, this episode. And that's gotten Michael Turner thinking over in our subreddit. He says, I've got an idea. How about Ubuntu? My answer to Canonical's Unity versus Unity 3D engine confusion. What do you think? We all know the problem and confusion of the two, so my solution is Canonical gives up their claim since, well, Unity 3D is likely much bigger and goes with Ubuntu. What do you think, Matt?
Well, okay. So if they were to go that route, no, I'm still not feeling it. I'm trying to get my head around that. Ubuntu just seems it sounds like something out of Mary Poppins. I can't put my head around it. I don't know. Ubuntu, beepity boo. It just doesn't work for me.
So you could always do like GNU/Ubuntu, as my next username points out, or Ubunality, as Ninjarson pointed out.
I think Ubuntu. Now you got me saying it. See, apparently it's a good idea. So I'm now saying
Ubiquity.
Ubuntu.
Now they already use Ubiquity, but I think
that'd further confuse, wouldn't it?
Yeah. See, and if they hadn't already used Ubiquity for something else, I think that would have made a better.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one though. That's a toughie.
All right, merely Jim writes in. He says, "Hey guys, I just did the $7 per month thing on Amazon. Thought I'd tell you why." Well, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, merely Jim. He said, "Really cool Android app picks. The AirDroid has made my life a lot easier.
Nice.
Keep them coming." Well, good. Really cool programs for the Linux desktop or laptop. There are a lot of apps out there, and even more permutations and forks of the previous apps on top of that. If it weren't for someone saying, "Hey, try this," I'd still be running Emacs or Vi.
Nice. That's great to hear. All right.
Says, I also distro hop a lot, but mainly stick to the Debian-based, not Ubuntu, distros for using XFCE. Always good to see that someone else is using that might work better. The previous show on XFCE was very much appreciated.
Awesome.
Says, you and Matt are doing a great job and hope that you continue doing what you're doing.
Nice.
Merely Jim.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for supporting the network, Merely Jim. We have a couple different ways if folks want to do that. If you go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, one of the ways that's really nice is we have the affiliate system in place. And the thing I like about this is while you're getting yourself something that's already part of your budget, you don't really have to worry about an extra expense. You can just contribute to Jupiter Broadcasting while you're shopping. Now, we're not like Ubuntu. We don't put these all up in your face.
No, you've got to go to it.
Yeah, the links are at the bottom of our website for Amazon US, UK, Amazon DE, Netflix. If you have a family member you want to get Netflix for the holidays, maybe they got like a Roku you want.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a nice little package
Get
there
the
together.
shopping now.
Use that link there. We got ThinkGeek, Best Buy, and Audible.com. Code School if you want to learn programming by doing online. And what people might want to consider, and I know a lot of you out there have, is we also have browser extensions for Chrome and Firefox. You load those in your browser, and then when you go to these sites that are in our affiliates network, it automatically takes your shopping session and contributes a small portion of your shopping session.
That's cool. You don't have to do anything specific. It just takes care of itself.
You don't have to worry about it.
Love it.
And we're constantly iterating on that extension, making it more memory efficient. Rikai has set up a Git repo so people can make suggestions, file bug reports.
Also, it's open source. That's cool.
Yeah, it's up there. The source is available.
Nice.
And we appreciate everyone who loads that on their browser or their family member's browser. I'm just saying.
Hey, just saying.
Now, if you want to get feedback into the show, you can email us linuxactionshow@jupiterbroadcasting.com or go to the subreddit linuxactionshow.reddit.com, and we have a silent majority that downloads the show.
Yes,
but a small percentage goes in that Reddit, and they help us shape the show and get it better and better. And one of the direct benefits of having a lot of what comes into the show listed in the subreddit is we can take advantage of our very smart audience, and we can sort of vet things before they make it onto the show.
Tap them for ideas, get feedback, see what we can improve upon.
And make sure that if a story's bogus, it gets caught, or if a tip is bad, it gets vetted. So that way, we're just two guys, and while we're really, really passionate and living this stuff all the time, there's only so much two people can do.
There's only so many hours in the day.
There's a certain responsibility when a show has a large audience reach, and a lot of those users are new. I don't want to give them bad information.
Right.
And I think one of the ways we keep the information quality high on this show is thanks to our subreddit. So thank you everyone who does that. And if you've been interested in contributing to the show in some form, that's a great way to do that. And it's also just a great source for news.
Absolutely. Best place to make suggestions. Absolutely. Single best place.
Yeah. And it's a good way to get our attention.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Matt, what have you been up to this week?
Well, this week I am still putting up articles at matthartley.com. That is matthartley.com. There are no slashes, backslashes, dashes, or otherwise.
Don't you get that wrong, Matt.
No X's, no Y's, no none of that.
#1 piece of feedback for last week.
And I even did, and speaking of the Reddit, I actually gave a little preview as to why that happened. But anyway, so, you can check me out at matthartley.com. And as always, you can also check me out at datamation.com, and then you scroll down the page a little bit and look for open source.
Cool,
Go
Matt.
click that.
Right on. So we can find Matt's musings throughout the week when he's not here on the big show.
You betcha.
All right. Well, you guys know me. You can follow me. I'm twitter.com/ChrisLAS. You can search for Chris Fisher on Google+. Or just go to bit.ly/Chris Fisher, actually. I forgot I even had that set up.
Hey.
So that's kind of convenient.
That is cool.
And you can find live times and all the other kinds of links and stuff we talked about in the show notes for this week's episode over at jupiterbroadcasting.com. I actually get people that write in and say, where are the show notes? Now, I think what it is when you're viewing the episode page, you got the video player there, you see the description and the links. I think a lot of people just don't scroll down.
Well, something I've done on my own channels
right
is that, and I actually had to do this because of that issue, is I literally, the very first thing in my description of my, like YouTube, for instance, it's a link. I link it first and then put the description underneath.
That's a good idea.
That way, because they're going to expand to see the text, but the link's right there. And you would think folks would think to scroll down, but throw it out there.
And on the YouTube videos, if you watch this on YouTube, I always try to put a bit.ly link in the description, so you can go back and grab the show notes. So if you
that's
just expand the show description on YouTube, because you're right, I should probably just put the link first.
It's small enough. Why not? Right?
I just don't like the way that looks.
It's not. Well, you know, it might be interesting to say.
I'm picky.
We'll give it a test. Maybe we won't. Who knows? We'll see.
But even if I forget, which is more likely the case, because you know that's hours away, man. I'm a robot when it comes to that stuff. It'll be there's always a link in the show description on the YouTube page as well.
Scroll down.
Yeah,
hit more.
You'll find it.
All that.
Yeah, and if you're on the main Jupiter Broadcasting page, just scroll down from the video.
Yeah.
They're all.
If you can't find it there, that's a whole other issue.
Yeah. What's funny is they can find out how to contact us, but they don't find. I'm not making fun of anybody. I understand.
No. It's well, and it's you know, I think people get into a certain type of browser mode. You just kind of do your thing. And, so on and so forth. Yeah. Sure. Okay.
All right. There you have it. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning to this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, and we'll see you right back here next week for pimping out your home server.
BSD.
We are going to take this off air, and we are going to have a conversation regarding this.
Speakage.
We are going to have a conversation.